Today we are going to talk about an amazing, powerful artist named Frida Kahlo and her famous self-portraits. So, Frida Kahlo is this woman here that you can see with the flowers in her hair. And her quote says, "I am my own muse. I am the subject I know the best. The subject I want to know better." So, muse is a word that means something that inspires you to create, usually to create art. So, Frida is saying that she is the reason that she's inspired to create art. Okay, so Frida Kahlo, full name Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo y Calderón, was born in 1907 in Mexico City. As a child, she was in a very bad bus accident and nearly died. She survived, but had to wear a metal brace and use a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Frida Kahlo was a very passionate woman. She fought for women's rights and for the rights of the poor in Mexico. She was very involved in politics where she met Diego Rivera, a mural artist, and eventually married him. Her marriage was very difficult as Diego was very mean to her, and they divorced twice. Frida dated many other people to try to find true love. Now, some things about Frida, including why I'm so excited to teach her to you, is if we take a look at that date, she was born in 1907, which means that she was about the same age as Esperanza in Esperanza Rising. Additionally, as you read, she grew up in rural Mexico, and she also moved around to America eventually, and so she experienced a lot of the same life that Esperanza experienced. They, of course, had a very different life, and Esperanza dealt in the farms, and Frida lived mostly with her paintings, but a lot of the life that inspired what Frida went through and what she put into her art is the same kind of experiences that Esperanza would have dealt with. So think about that. Keep that in mind as we take a look at some of her art. And another thing, as you may have noticed, she divorced Diego Rivera twice, which means after she divorced him, she married him again. So, this is a picture of her easel when it was adjusted for her wheelchair. As you read, because of the bus accident, she lived in a wheelchair her whole entire life, and so she had to work from it. That's her wheelchair, and that's her easel. All right. Frida's art was not as popular as her husband's art when she was alive. Still, her art was so good that the Louvre, by the way, is the most famous museum in the world. The Louvre bought her painting, and she became the first Mexican artist with art in the Louvre. When she was in her 40s, she had surgery for her brace, which was the big metal brace in her back, and got an infection. She became deathly ill, so her friend hosted Frida's first and only gallery show. She died shortly after, in 1954. However, in the 1970s, people started to pay more attention to women artists, including Kahlo. She became a sensation almost overnight. Her art is now considered treasures of Mexico, and her art that is still in Mexico cannot leave. The paintings that exist out of Mexico are worth millions of dollars. So she did become famous, but not until she had died. This gallery that her friend did was a very kind thing. It was her only real chance to be shown among other people, for her art to be celebrated, because everybody really loved to talk about Diego and Diego Rivera's art. And now, honestly, Frida is more famous and more successful than Diego. So, here is an example, by the way, of one of Frida's paintings in a museum with, of course, people taking pictures of it because she is such a famous artist. Now, I do want to point out something about Frida that you're going to notice. She doesn't look like most people nowadays. She has a physical appearance that a lot of people would consider ugly because she doesn't change her facial hair. She lets it grow wherever it needs to grow. And Frida did that on purpose. She could have changed her physical appearance if she wanted, but it was very important to her the way that she looked, and she always wanted to challenge the idea that you have to look a certain way to be beautiful. So keep that in mind as we look at her paintings. This is Self-Portrait with a Thorn Necklace. Now, Frida's art is amazing because she likes to talk about symbolism. She likes to include symbolism in her art. Symbolism means that there are things that represent other things. So we have here Frida, and she's wearing a thorn necklace with a bird in it, with some animals behind her. This cat that almost looks like a panther, this monkey. She did have pet monkeys, by the way. And she's in kind of a jungle. So I want you to think about what this painting might represent. It could represent her being wild. It could represent how she lives in Mexico, where there's a lot of jungles. The necklace with thorns on it, some of these thorns are even cutting into her neck. You can see some trickles of blood. It could represent the pain that she deals with, the physical pain and the emotional pain in her life. And maybe some other things. What do you think it represents? Now this one, Self-Portrait as Tejuana. Now Tejuana is a culture in a certain part of Mexico, especially in the Oaxaca area of Mexico, which Frida's mother, Matilde, grew up in that area. So Matilde had photos of herself in the traditional Tejuana outfits, such as this one that Frida drew herself in, that Frida saw growing up. And the culture of the Tejuana is a matriarchal culture, which means it's led by the women. So Frida, as a very strong woman who believes in herself and her own power, and that she doesn't have to be lesser than a man, really liked the idea of this powerful feminist culture. So she showed herself in their dress. Now you'll notice there's something interesting besides the dress and besides all of these roots and strings coming off of her, and that's this. There's a man on her forehead. Now, take one guess who that man is. It's Diego Rivera, her two-time husband. So here you have an image of Frida Kahlo dressed in feminist clothing of a culture that says the women are in charge, with a man on her forehead. It's a very interesting thought. It could mean a lot of things. To me, it means that maybe she sees the complex reality of herself being an independent woman, but always having this man on her mind. Maybe it means something different to you. This one I really like. It's Self-Portrait along the border of Mexico and the United States. And you see here we have on one side these machineries, pollution. This says FORD, Ford, which was the Ford company was extremely influential in the 30s. We have electricity, and on here we have rocks, ruins, sun with streamers of light or blood coming out of it, a moon, lightning between. There seems to be some Aztec things, flowers, roots. She's standing on top of a grave that says Carmen Rivera, and it's actually plugged into this machine. And so we see a lot of imagery, a lot of symbolism of what it means to be in the United States, what it means to be in Mexico. So Frida felt very connected to both identities, the Mexico where she grew up, the United States where she lived, but you'll notice she's holding a Mexican flag. So think, which culture do you think she felt most connected to? And what do you think all these symbols mean? I love to hear your ideas on this one, but I'm going to keep going. You feel free to share them with me if you want. Now, this is Self-Portrait with cropped hair. You'll notice that Frida is not wearing her normal long hair, but it looks like she's just cut it. She's holding scissors. There's hair all over the chair, all over the floor. and she's wearing a man's clothes. She's not wearing a woman's jacket because it clearly doesn't fit her. It's clearly too big. So she's wearing a man's clothes. This could mean a lot of things as well. I've heard some students say that maybe she wants to be a man. I've heard some students say maybe she feels more comfortable being in men's clothing, or maybe she wants to be treated the same as a man. What do you think it means? This one is a very powerful piece. She has given us kind of an x-ray into her body where she's shown us what the metal brace along her back looks like. And you'll notice she has nails all over her body and tears in her eyes. So, what do you think this piece is showing? I know for me, it seems to show that her brace hurts constantly. It feels like she has nails in her body constantly, and she wants to cry at all times. If you know someone with something called a chronic illness or chronic pain, they're dealing with pain like a brace every moment of their lives. And Frida probably felt that and wanted to share that with the world. Now this piece is very interesting. We've got Frida and Frida. They're connected through a vein. Both of them have hearts. One of them seems to have it cut. And this one, I have to be honest, I'm not sure what it means. But I love to know that there are so many different interpretations of the symbols that you could have. What does the Frida in the dress mean? What does the Frida in this outfit mean? What is she holding here? To me, it looks like a skull. And why? Why is she cutting the vein? What's going on? What do self-portraits like this mean? What do you think being a Mexican and living in America in the 30s and 40s had to do with her art? I think there was a lot of pain because Mexico was going through a lot of political revolution at the time. And so she had a lot of strong feelings. In a political revolution, you need to think very strongly and firmly for yourself. You need to decide what's important to you. And so that's a moment where she is showing the world what is important to her. Now, for our project, we are also going to create self-portraits. I have one that I'm going to show you. In our self-portrait, we are showing, just like Frida did, a self-portrait with symbols that represent us and the things that we're going through. So, here's mine that I made. Hi, it's me. And so I've got myself in here holding with my dog on my shoulder and my bird, who has since unfortunately passed away, in front. And they represent my pets and how important they are to me. I have over here the Sears Tower, or the Willis Tower technically now, which is in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago, and that city is very important to me. I have behind me a red curtain. Now, if you've ever been part of theater, you know what that represents. A red curtain is a huge symbol in the theater world, and that's because musical theater is very important to me. And I have in the front a candle, and that represents my religion and how my faith is important to me. And lastly, I'm wearing a wedding dress to show that my relationship is very important to me. So when you create your self-portrait, I want you to think about these same ideas. What is important to you, and what does it symbolize? Today, you're going to get a blank sheet of paper, and you're going to write 10 things that are important to you. They can be friends, family, sports, anything. And then I want you to write for each of them 1 or 2 objects that symbolizes that thing. If you like soccer, maybe it's a soccer ball and a jersey. If you love your family, maybe it's an activity that you do together. I recommend making a chart, and that's going to be easiest. Make the list this week. 5 things that are important to you. Did I say 5 or 10? I'll check. The list of things that are important to you, what they can represent, and next week I'm going to send you a video, a very simple video on how to do a good self-portrait. You'll include the things around and behind you. So, write down your list. Good luck, and have fun.